When I said to Rick last week, we're going to be talking about trust, he said, I thought that was this week. When we were talking about commitment. Do you remember that? Talking about commitment. And in a sense, there's a sort of very fine dividing line. It's that some scholars will tell you that those verses that we're going to look at in a minute, it's using the typical Hebrew verse structure of saying the same thing twice in different ways. I think there's a bit of a distinction between the two. Trust. I will trust in you. Easy to sing that. Easy to sing that when you don't move the mountain, when you don't part the waters, when you don't make life easy, when you don't seem to be answering my prayers, when you don't heal me, when you don't do the things I need you to do, when you don't provide the money when I'm running out of money, when you don't give me what I need. And in fact, when things get worse, when instead of the mountain moving it gets bigger, and then instead of the waters parting they get deeper, and instead of the sickness healing it gets worse, I will trust in you. A lot easier to sing, isn't it? A lot easier to trust the Lord when everything's going well. A lot easier to trust the Lord when we see the miracles taking place before our eyes. We need to hold on to trust in all things. Trust, it's a scarce resource. Our society is becoming increasingly mistrustful. I'm not just talking about trusting in Jesus, I'm talking about trust in general. The authority figures that we used to look up to and respect, we just can't trust them. So our leaders we don't trust, the police we don't trust them, medical staff we don't trust the medical staff, we don't trust ministers of religion, we don't trust teachers, we don't trust, you can't trust anyone these days. Are you a trusting person? Do you trust me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you say you trust me, that's good. What do you trust me to do? I mean, would you trust me to drive you to the airport if you were going on holiday?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I'm quite safe behind the wheel.
Oh, you fix on Sunday.
How am I I'm picking somebody up from the station. I can't do that. So you trust me to drive you to the airport. Would you trust me to fly the plane?
No.
Quite right. Because I haven't got a Scoobies about how to fly a plane. So we have trust, but in limitations. This is the verse that we've been thinking about. Let's read this together. Commit your way to the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. Last week, so we were talking about commit your way to the Lord. That's saying, Lord, I want to do things your way. Lord, I'm going to walk with you. Lord, I'm going to follow you. Lord, it's not my way. I'm committed to doing things your way. That's what we were talking about. The next step is to trust the Lord's way, even when it doesn't make sense to us. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it seems downright dangerous. What can we trust God for? There's some lovely verses in Proverbs chapter 3, which some of you will know off by heart. They were given to me when I first committed my life to Jesus. My dad came to see me that night. I was 8 3/4. I'll tell you when it was. It was the 28th of February, 1970. Everything was in black and white. Rationing had just finished. They'd only just invented the wheel. I know, all those things. And my dad came to see me, and he gave me this verse, and I wrote it down in the front of my Bible. It's in big, I've still got that Bible, and it's in big pencil lettering. So I couldn't use a pen at that stage. Big pencil lettering. And then when I was baptised at the age of 13, the elder who baptised me gave me a verse. I've got a verse for you, Dave, and it's the same verse. And it's this one. There's two verses actually. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. It says, with all your heart you must trust the Lord and not your own judgment. Always let him lead you, and then he will clear the road for you to follow. And I've memorized those verses, and I've learned not only to remember them, I've learned them in the older version. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, he will direct your paths. But I've learned to try and live by them. Trust. With all your heart you must trust the Lord. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him. The Hebrew word that's used for trust in those verses is that one there. It's not pronounced like that, batak. It's not Welsh. It's bultak. And it means these things. It means trust, which is why it's been translated as trust. It means to be confident. There's an assurance with that. To be confident in the Lord. Why? Because he's reliable. And in your journey with Jesus, you should find out that he is more and more reliable. He doesn't become more reliable. He is completely reliable. We learn to rely on him more and more. It means be bold. Be bold in him. That means act. And that's the whole point of trusting. Today it's about acting on that commitment that we say we've made. I'm committed to follow Jesus. Well, do something then. Do what? Well, trust him. Be confident in him. Be bold in him. Be prepared to step outside of your comfort zone as he leads you. I don't mean just be reckless with life, but be bold in following him. Step out of your comfort zone on the basis of your trust and his trustworthiness. It means be carefree. What do you think of people who are carefree?
Amazing people.
Amazing people, possibly a bit simple, have realised how serious life is. Not worried. Listen, there is a medical condition called anxiety. And please never think for one moment that I am dismissing that. And somebody who's suffering from anxiety, you can't just say, cheer up, it's all going to be alright. Don't worry, everything's going to be fine, because that's not helpful. So let's just acknowledge that right here and now. But some of us worry so much about things unnecessarily. That medical condition of anxiety doesn't mean that that person hasn't got any faith. But so many of us without that condition still live worried lives when we shouldn't be worrying, when we should be able to trust the Lord because he's trustworthy. That word botak means be secure. Be secure, why? Because you are in safe hands. In my own walk with Jesus, I've seen how I am in safe hands. I've been able to testify to it. When just a few months ago, when my contract on the other job, as far as I'm aware, the contract on this job's okay, but the contract on the other job was ticking down, and it was coming to an end. And my line manager said, "We're not sure what's going to happen." And I said, "It's all right. It's all going to be okay." She said, "Why?" I said, "Because it always is." Be secure. You're in safe hands. Listen to this. It's written by a guy called Tim Hansel in a book he wrote called Holy Sweat back in 1987. It says this one day, while my son Zach and I were out in the country climbing around in some cliffs, I heard a voice from above me yell, "Hey Dad, catch me!" I turned around to see Zach joyfully jumping off a rock straight at me. He had jumped and then yelled, "Hey Dad, catch me!" I became an instant circus act, catching him. We both fell to the ground. For a moment after I caught him, I could hardly talk. When I found my voice again, I gasped in exasperation. "Zach, can you give me one good reason why you did that?" He responded with remarkable calmness. "Sure, because you're my dad." Isn't that good? His whole assurance was based in the fact that his father was trustworthy. He could live life to the hilt because I could be trusted. Isn't this even more true for a Christian? I will trust in you. I will trust with all my heart. So often we trust God in principle. Do you trust God? Of course I do. But not actually in practice. We don't live that life of trust. Sometimes you'll hear of Christians who are living by faith. You heard of that expression? What does that mean? They haven't got a proper job.
Totally trusting.
Sorry?
Totally trusting.
Totally trusting. They've been called out of mainstream employment perhaps, and they're relying on the Lord to meet their needs because the job that He's called them to do doesn't pay. There's a sense in which we should all be living by faith. We trust Him for our eternal salvation. Like you might trust me to drive you to the airport. But can we trust Him for the rest of the week? Can we trust Him with the issues we're dealing with the relationships we're concerned about? Can we trust Him with the medical results we're waiting to hear about? Can we trust Him with the financial difficulties we're facing? Can we trust Him with all the concerns of our life? Can we live life to the hilt because we're in safe hands? Heard about the man who took his first plane flight. He was very worried about it. And at the end his friend said to him, "How was it?" He said, "It was all right, but I didn't put all my weight down." Just in case. I said last week it's like learning to swim, keeping one foot on the bottom. Teaching a child to ride a bike. How many of you taught a child to ride a bike? And they start with the stabilisers, and then they get to the stage where you're holding the back of the seat and holding them up, and they're pedalling and you're running along. There comes a point where you've got to let go. Now that's you being in control and them having to trust you. But you know, you'd never see these people winning the Tour de Yorkshire with the dads running along holding the back of the bikes up for them, would you? There comes a point where we need to be set free and release ourselves into trust. Trust also in Him. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, every area of your life. Hand it over to Him in trust. Why? Because you're in safe hands. He's your dad. He's not going to let you fall. Trust in Him with all your heart, not with your own understanding. Trusting God means you don't have to have reasons or explanations. Trusting Him means when He says do something, you do it because He said to do it. And you don't know why, and you may never find out. But because He told you to do it, that's good enough, because you know He never wastes anything, He doesn't make mistakes, He always has a purpose in everything He does. How do you learn to trust somebody? How do you learn to trust somebody? Get to know them. You earn somebody's trust. They earn your trust. How do you know you can trust God? It develops over time as He proves Himself in areas of your life. As you walk with Him, as you put your trust in Him, as you see Him being trustworthy, you grow in your confidence. You trust Him in the small things, you learn to trust Him in the bigger things too. For us to grow in our trust in God, we need to put ourselves, or He needs to put us, in situations where we have no option but to trust. He has to put us through some difficult and uncomfortable situations where He can prove Himself. The problems we face are His opportunities to show His trustworthiness. Like Jesus telling the disciples to cross the lake when He knew a storm was coming, so He could demonstrate His power over the storm. He didn't tell them there's a storm coming because they might not have gone, but He allowed them to get into that situation. Like God leading the Israelites out of Egypt, out of slavery, into the wilderness, right up against the Red Sea. So that they were trapped between a sea they couldn't cross and an army that was coming to annihilate them. God led them that way. They didn't take a wrong turning. They weren't ignoring the spiritual sat-nav. God led them to that point. And the Israelites looked at Moses and said, "Why have you led us here? Why have you brought us here to die?" And Moses looked at God and said, "What are we doing here?" And God said, "Watch." And the sea they couldn't cross parted. And the army, probably the most technologically advanced army in the known world at that time, that was chasing up behind them, was wiped out. And God said, "That's just for starters. Should we do the rest of this journey now? Can you trust me for what's ahead?" And so often we forget what God has done in the past. And He's proved Himself trustworthy, and we've brought us so far, and then we panic because there's another situation we can't handle. God will call you to do something that you don't have the resources or experience for, so that He can demonstrate His power at work in you. Back in 2008, I was facing redundancy yet again. Having come out of full-time employment in 2002 and being provided by the Lord with part-time work while I was working in the church and going to Bible college, and I was still coming towards the end of my Bible college course, and the part-time work always fitted in, didn't interfere with college, so I could keep going to the lectures I needed to go to. I could still be free on the Sundays and in the week to serve in the local church there I was in. 2008, the contract I was on was coming to an end. And I had a little conversation with Jesus, because I didn't know what was going to happen, and I needed some kind of part-time work. And Jesus said to me, "Dave, am I a good shepherd?" I thought, why is He changing the subject? I said, "Yes, Lord, of course you're the good shepherd." He said, "Do you trust me to lead you into green pastures?" Do you understand what that means? You know, where everything is, you can see for miles, everything is clear, all you need is provided. That's it if you're a sheep. So, apply those principles. I said, "Of course." He said, "Now, will you trust me to lead you through the dark valley?" I said, "Do I have to?" He said, "We're going that way." That means you can't see. You can't see what's around the corner. You can't see ahead. You can't see how you're going to cope. Up to this point, everything's been fine. Now there's a black hole. Will you trust me? Yeah. Okay. but where am I going to find a job, a part-time job that's going to fit in with college and everything else? He said, Dave, you're asking questions. Will you trust me? And then the job was advertised to work for the local council in a department now. It was part-time, and the hours fitted. So I went for an interview, and I flew through the interview, and the manager said, "You got any questions?" I said, "Yeah, it says it's 18 and a half hours a week. When are those hours?" He said, "Well, you tell me which days you want to work, and we'll get the temp to do the rest." Thank you, Jesus. We need to trust, even when we can't see the outcome. Even when we can't see what's ahead. Even if we don't know what the consequences of the step or the jump we're about to take will lead to, we need to trust. Because you know what? It can be better than we can expect. I want to show you a clip of a film. I think I've shown it to some of you before. It's from a film called Finding Nemo. Okay? A cartoon. Great film. So there's this guy called Marvin. He's a clownfish. He's trying to find his son who's been taken off to Sydney somewhere, and he's being helped by another fish called Dory, who's got a very short memory. And they're trying to find their way, and they call upon a whale to help. And it goes like this.
Oh, it's just as well. He might be hungry.
Don't worry, whales don't eat clownfish, they eat krill. Swim away! Oh look, krill!
Move, Dory! Move!
I think he says we've stopped.
Well, of course we've stopped. Just stop trying to speak whale. You're gonna make things worse. What is that noise? Oh no. Look what you did. The water's going down. It's going down.
Really? You sure about that?
Look, already it's half empty.
I'd say it's half full.
Stop that! It's half empty!
Okay, that one was a little tougher. He either said we should go to the back of the throat, or he wants a root beer float.
Of course he wants us to go there! That's eating us! How do I taste, Moby? Huh? Do I taste good? You tell him I'm not interested in being lunch.
Okay,
Stop talking to him! What is going on?
I'll check!
No! No more whale! You can't speak whale!
Yes, I can!
No, you can't! You think you can do these things, but you can't, Nemo!
Okay!
Dory!
He says it's time to let go! Everything's gonna be alright!
How do you know? How do you know something bad isn't gonna happen?
I don't!
He says, it's time to let go. How do you know something bad isn't going to happen? We don't. But it could be the best thing ever. We might fall, we could fly. But if he tells us to do it, will we trust him? Let him have his way? Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. Let's pray. So, may you choose his way at every step of your life. And may you trust him to bring you through, not just as a survivor, but as more than a conqueror. May you trust the Lord, who is trustworthy over the evidence of your eyes, the advice of your friends, and the limitations of your understanding. May you trust the Lord, who is trustworthy over the evidence of your eyes, the advice of your friends, and the limitations of your understanding. May you take giant leaps of faith, knowing that he will catch you every time, without fail, for his name's sake.